Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the disappearance of Heather Elvis. This was a suggested case by Natasha, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. I'd just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect whatsoever to anyone I'm going to talk about. I've just gathered this information from the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. So Heather, leading up to her disappearance, she was actually having an affair with a married man. But this relationship did end a couple of months before she actually disappeared. However, his wife did find out, and she was, well, crazy to say the least. Let's just say you'll find out for yourself, but you'll see some very interesting text messages and footage that would incline you to believe the same way, most likely. Heather Rachel Elvis was born on the 24th of June in 1993. To her father Terry and her mother Debbie. She did have an older brother and a younger sister, and they all lived in Horry County, South Carolina in the US. Heather went to St. James High School and she graduated in 2011. She went on to study cosmetology. She was so passionate about it. It was something she absolutely loved to do, and that's what she wanted to make her career in. She was really good at it as well. At the age of 18, she was the eldest daughter, and so her and her parents agreed that she would be allowed to move out. She moved out to an apartment in Carolina Forest, which she shared with her roommate, Brianna Warrelman. She worked two jobs. She worked as a waitress in the Tilted Kilt in Myrtle Beach and the House of Blues, which is in the north of Myrtle Beach. And these are like restaurants / pubs, and she would work here while she was also studying cosmetology. She just really worked really hard to try and carve this specific life out for herself. And she was described as this loving, kind-hearted girl who would just go out of her way to help others. In June 2013 is when her troubles began, unfortunately. She developed this secret. She had this huge infatuation with this man who was named Sidney Mora. He was this Myrtle Beach native. He owned his own business called Palmetto Maintenance. And he had been hired to repair some kitchen equipment in one of the restaurants that Heather worked in, and as soon as she saw him, he caught her eye. And she instantly pointed him out to Brianna, who also worked at the Tilted Kilt. He was 18 years older than Heather, being 38, and he was a married man to his wife, Tammy. Heather would tweet about him and how she was just infatuated with this man, and she didn't hold back on literally anything. Around a month later, Heather expressed on Twitter once more a sexual interest in this man. By all accounts, Heather began seeing Sidney and their relationship was very intense. And to say that he was married, they never really kept it a secret. They didn't really try and hide it. Heather would tell her roommate how much she was in love with Sidney. Other friends and co-workers all knew about him. He would even come to her work while Heather was still working and drop off coffee and bagels for her. So he was just putting it out there. He was just making a public spectacle of it. Sidney even talked to his own friends about bringing Heather on as a nanny for his children, his and Tammy's children, which I found very strange. Why would you bring the younger girl that you were having an affair with on as your nanny? From what I could find online, Heather and Sidney's relationship only lasted for several months before it was over in September. And this was a tweet which followed. That's not the end of the story, however, because in October, Tammy, Sidney's wife, found out about the affair. And in all honesty, I'm surprised it actually took her that long, because they weren't keeping it a secret, like, at all. They were just flaunting it all over the place. They weren't even remotely trying to hide it. Anyway, obviously Tammy was angry. She was upset, like you would be. She just found out that her husband was cheating on her with an 18-year-old girl. You're gonna be devastated. But the crazy thing was that Tammy began harassing Heather. She was texting her these threatening messages, phoning her to end this affair with her husband and to stop seeing him, which at this point she already had. She'd already stopped the affair in September. And this is kind of where the crazy remark comes in, because Tammy didn't really act rationally at all. She got Sydney to ring Heather as she was listening in on the other end. She told him to say that they'd be ending their relationship, which by all accounts had already ended. She made Sydney tell Heather how she was nothing to him, and how basically he just used her. And this phone call literally tore Heather apart, which it would do. You'd be devastated. She really did care for Sydney, and just to be told these things was just awful for him. For the next 2 months, Heather would be really upset about it. But Tammy didn't stop there. She would send Heather so many texts from Sydney's phone. She even password protected it so that only she had access, and if Sydney wanted to use his own phone, mind, he would have to ask for permission to use it. She even went as far and as extreme as sending pictures of her and Sydney having sex to Heather. And that must have just been awful for Heather to receive something like that. I mean, she was a young girl. She was only 18. She doesn't need this harassment from a 30-odd-year-old woman. And sending pictures like that is just horrific. Tammy was just so controlling that she would literally handcuff Sydney to the bed at night to make sure that he didn't leave. She would accompany him everywhere he went to make sure that he didn't stray. And so she could just keep an eye on him, I guess. She also made Sydney tattoo her name, Tammy, on his stomach, which is completely normal. Throughout this time, I've seen that Tammy just continued to text Heather all the time, even though the affair, like I said, had already ended. This was just next level anger from Tammy. Please don't get me wrong, I completely understand. It's your husband and he's cheated on you with this young girl. You're gonna be angry, you're gonna be upset, but to go to the level that she did, it was just so extreme. She was harassing this young woman, and it was just madness what she used to send her and what she used to text her and all sorts. Tammy also tried to get Heather fired from one of her jobs. She basically rang up complaining about Heather and said that her husband would not be making any more repairs on their kitchen if Heather still worked there. And that resulted in Heather losing hours at her job at the Tilted Kilt. On the 5th of November in 2013 is estimated the last time that Heather actually met with Sydney, or at least the last time that we can confirm. And the same day she tweeted this joke. To which I bet Tammy would have been furious. Tammy and Sydney went on holiday to Disney on the 19th of November, and they were due to be coming home on the 11th of December. And whilst they were gone, Heather was able to relax. She was not receiving these incessant messages of Tammy. She was able to just kind of get back to her hotel. She would go around to her friends and she would just be so much more relaxed. And it was like things were finally looking up. She's put Sydney kind of behind her. She got this new job in a beauty parlour, which was a passion. That's what she wanted to do. She loved, obviously, all makeup and things like that, and it was something that she was really looking forward to. However, co-workers did begin to notice that she was putting on a lot of weight very rapidly. Baby weight. Her clothes were very ill-fitting. Her breasts had gone up 3 cup sizes in a very short space of time. And Heather began to worry that she'd become pregnant by Sydney. It was apparently said that she did actually take one pregnancy test, but the test came back as error, so it was never actually confirmed as to whether Heather was pregnant. Just imagine if Tammy heard about this, like, she did all those things after hearing about their affair. And things got crazy. What would happen if she found out that Heather was possibly pregnant and that it was possibly Sydney's baby? So Brianna left in December. She was going to spend the holidays with her family over in Florida, and this left Heather on her own. On the 17th of December, Heather put a call through to Brianna and she told her that she was going on a date, which would be the first date after the escapade with Sydney. This would be a first date with a guy that she met called Stephen Giraldi. And she was just really excited. Now, this is the timeline that has kind of been pieced together as to what happened that night. What happened when 20-year-old Heather Elvis disappeared. As I said, she was really excited for this date. She was just telling everyone close to her that she was so happy and she was just looking forward to it. At 10 p.m, Stephen drove her around in his car and they were looking at all the residential Christmas lights. He then went to a car park where he began teaching her how to drive. She even sent a photo to her dad. And it stated, "Look at me, I'm pro." Everything went really well. She seemed really happy. And the date just went along swimmingly. Stephen dropped her back off at her apartment at around 1:15 a.m. And at 1:19 a.m, Sydney was caught on surveillance video in a local Walmart buying a pregnancy test. "20 minutes later, Heather received a call, which was from a payphone that lasted around about 5 minutes. At 1:44 a.m, Heather went on to call Brianna in Florida. She told her that Sydney had just called, telling her that he was planning on leaving Tammy and had asked Heather to meet up with him. And Brianna described Heather as being really upset, and obviously she would be. She was just getting over Sydney, and now he was ringing her and kind of dredging it all back. And she'd just been out on a date with Stephen and she enjoyed it, so her emotions would have been everywhere. Brianna tried to comfort her and told her that she shouldn't go meet with him and that she probably should sleep on it or something like that. To which Heather agreed. She said that she wouldn't meet him and that she would sleep on it. At 2:29 a.m, Heather's phone tried to call the payphone, to which she'd received this call of Sydney, but there was no answer. At 2:42 a.m, Heather's phone pinged at Longbeard's Bar and Restaurant. At 2:57 a.m, her phone was pinged as leaving the restaurant, heading towards Augusta Plantation Drive, but then quickly turned back around and headed back to Longbeard's Bar. Maybe she was planning on going somewhere, but had changed her mind. At 3:16 a.m, she tried to call Sydney's phone again, but once more, no answer. And then she left Longbeard's. She went back to her apartment, I think it was around 3:20 a.m, and she called Sydney's mobile again. But this time she did get an answer. The call lasted around about 4 minutes. She was recorded at being at her apartment and he was at his house. At around 3:30 a.m, Heather's phone moved to a secluded wooded area known as Peachtree Boat Landing near Myrtle Beach. This area was very dark, it was very isolated, and it was kind of well known as a place to go. It was very popular with kayakers and fishermen. But it wasn't really somewhere you'd go at this time in the morning when it was pitch black. Like I said, it was just very isolated, and the woods and stuff, it wasn't really in the public eye or anything like that. So why would anyone want to go there at this time in the morning? Around about this time, a surveillance camera caught a truck heading towards Peachtree Boat Landing from the direction of the Mora house. And this car was later confirmed to be Sydney's car. At 3:38 a.m, her phone tried to call Sydney's phone. There would be 3 more calls consecutively made from Heather's to Sydney's from 3:39 a.m, all of which were not answered. At 3:42 a.m, all the phone activity on Heather's phone just completely ceases. So that either means that her battery died or her phone was switched off. At 3:47 a.m, the same camera catches the exact same truck heading from Peach Landing back to the Mora's household. So Sydney and Tammy would later on claim that they were out and about at that time, early hours, driving around in the pitch black in these secluded areas having sex. And it was just pure coincidence that they ended up in the same place as Heather, in Peachtree Landing, at the exact same time in the early hours in the pitch black. The following day, Heather's father, Terry, had not heard from her and obviously began to get worried. He rang the police. Police went on to find Heather's abandoned car at Peachtree Landing, and Terry had a spare set of keys, so he drove down, he opened the car for the police, and they had a look inside. Now, they didn't really find anything, although the car was messy, yes. They didn't find too much apart from a few receipts that were timestamped of that same day. Tori then went on to drive her car home, which I don't really understand because any evidence or any fingerprints that may have been in this car had just been destroyed because he was allowed to just take it home. They never fingerprinted the car, they never did anything like that. They just sent him home with it, which is just very weird. Heather was never seen of or heard of again. It was just like she'd completely vanished with her car keys and her phone, and she was just never seen. Obviously, everyone was trying to find where she'd gone. They were trying to ring the phone and things like that, but no one could get through. They searched the area thoroughly with just so many people looking for her. Heather's date, Stephen, was questioned and he was immediately ruled out as a suspect. Sydney and Tammy were questioned after having been found out that he was the last person that actually spoke to Heather. They kept changing the story. Yes, I called her. No, I didn't. Who on earth is Heather? I don't know who she is. Things like that. Terry did actually find out that Sydney was the last person to speak to his daughter, and so he rang him. He found his number in the phone book somewhere. He stated that Sydney was swearing at him and basically denying ever having spoken to Heather. Terry told him that he was just trying to find his daughter. Any information could help. You've got children of your own. You understand what I'm going through. And Sydney just replied with, "Don't threaten my kids," and then he put the phone down. Before this, Heather's parents had never even heard about Sydney. I've seen that obviously the police went and spoke to Sydney, but he just denied ever having spoke to Heather at all. But they had proof. They had CCTV or cameras showing Sydney at this phone booth, which is where Heather received the call. When confronted with this, he changed his story and he said he rang her simply to tell her to leave him alone and just stop contacting him. I couldn't find any evidence of Heather trying to make any contact with Sydney before this at all. So why was he calling her to tell her to leave him alone when she already had been doing?
When was the last time you talked to her before that 3 or 4 minutes?
Oh, shit, probably into October, beginning of November, right in there somewhere.
So you hadn't talked to her?
Oh, no. It was like well before, because we went on vacation. It was well before we went on vacation.
There was a phone call made to Heather that night from a payphone at the gas station on 10th Avenue.
Okay.
When we have video from that.
Okay.
Did you try calling her? Just a minute?
No.
A second? You sure?
Maybe.
Okay, how about we start again?
I did. I called her. From
okay, let's start from the start again. Because I
know.
I don't know you. You don't know me.
I know. In the whole story, everything's legit. Okay.
In February, 2 months after Heather went missing, Sydney went on to file multiple complaints that him and his family were being harassed. But there was never any proof or anything substantiating his claims of anything happening to his family. The police did look into other suspects, but they were ruled out pretty quickly, and that just put them back onto Sydney and Tammy. They were the ones that couldn't be ruled out. When they looked further into the case, they found the Walmart footage of the pregnancy test, which I told you about earlier in the timeline. This is kind of what made so many people suspect that this is why Tammy couldn't get over the affair, that she found out that Heather was pregnant with Sydney's baby, the possibility of it being Sydney's baby. And she, of course, just stated that this pregnancy test was for her, that they'd been trying for a baby, and that was for her. However, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. Why would you go out at 2 a.m. to buy a pregnancy test for your wife? You just wait until the morning, surely. Tammy went on to state that she didn't care about the affair between Sydney and Heather, that she'd in fact had her own boyfriend for months, and it didn't bother her, but the only thing that did bother her is when her kids were dragged into it, which I think is complete and utter nonsense. She literally harassed Heather all the time. She was constantly ringing her, constantly texting her, sending her these graphical images, and she didn't care about the affair. Yeah, right. Like I said earlier, the footage of Sydney's car was also determined that it was Sydney's car. This allowed the police to search the vehicle. They also went on to search the Mora household. They came across some footage which was kind of on the Mora house, and it showed them cleaning their brand new truck very thoroughly. This was taken a couple of days after Heather's disappearance, and once they'd cleaned their new truck, they literally burnt the rags. There's also footage of Tammy going around the yard with a mirror. So she's got this mirror and she's searching. Also, just days after Heather went missing. After an 11-hour search, Tammy and Sydney were arrested and they were charged with murder, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and 2 counts each of indecent exposure. And this was actually from photographs that they found on Tammy's phone of them, probably the ones that they sent to Heather, having sex in a public area. For several months, the pair were held, but the judge would eventually be convinced to allow bail at a bond, and each of them were actually put up and they were released in early 2015. They were required, however, to wear these electronic devices, obviously so the police could track them, they could see wherever they were at all points in time. In September 2015, the pair put in kind of this appeal to allow them to move to Florida, because Sydney apparently had a job opportunity there and he needed to work and things like that. And they were granted this permission, and that did actually shock quite a few people, because these 2 people were under investigation for kidnap and murder of a young girl, and they were just released and allowed to move and just do what they wanted. 6 months later, the murder charges were dropped.
Why did they drop that murder charge against this couple?
Hey, good morning, Brad. Well, the media reached out to officials and they couldn't give a comment as to why the charges have been dropped. However, Sydney and Tammy Moore are still being charged with kidnapping. Now, they are connected to the disappearance of Heather Elvis, but police say even though they have never found a body, they still believe that she was killed.
I really do believe that they didn't have enough evidence to actually charge them for murder, and rather than letting them get off scot-free and kind of sort of risking them not actually getting any conviction by trying for a murder conviction, that is why they possibly dropped it, because they just didn't have the evidence to charge them for that. But they did have evidence to charge them for the kidnapping and things like that, so they just tried for that side of it instead of the murder, and therefore they would win it against that, hopefully. In June 2016, the trial for kidnapping on Sydney's behalf began, and they deliberated for 11 hours. After hearing all the details about it, it ended up being a hung jury. 10 wanted to convict and 2 didn't. The judge called it a mistrial. Tammy Moore would be tried in October of 2018, and she was found guilty of kidnapping and sentenced to 30 years in jail. In September 2019, Sydney was put on trial again, and he was found guilty of kidnapping and also sentenced to 30 years in jail. This still isn't a victory for Heather's family though, and they still don't see it as one, because yes, okay, these 2 are serving time in prison, but they still don't know what happened to the daughter. The Moores continue to maintain their innocence, and because of this have not stated what actually happened to her. They never got any other leads, no other information came out, so we still don't truly know what actually happened to her. They haven't been allowed to bring her body home if she was killed. They haven't been able to bury her and lay her to rest, or even know if she's still alive, because there's even the possibility that she is somewhere. They just can't get that closure, even though the people suspected in the crime are serving their jail sentence. So yeah, if you guys have any more suggestions you'd like me to look into, please let me know. I'll look into them for you. Give me a big thumbs up on this video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Heather Elvis. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!